Got it. Okay, so for those of you that aren't familiar with Big River Farms, I'll just give you a quick overview. We are part of a larger organization called the Food Group, which is a hunger relief organization that does a lot of food distribution, programming, food shelf partner relationships, have a mobile market, and then also operate our Big River Farms part of the organization. So we are a year-round grower training program on a 60-acre certified organic farm, about 40 minutes from the Twin Cities in the St. Croix River Valley. Our program, we have about anywhere from 14 to 25 farm teams annually, just depending throughout the years how the land and business models have shifted. It is intentionally designed to serve folks with that face land barrier issues or have limited resources. And we've been operating for about 20 years on this site, formerly the Minnesota Food Association. We have two program models that folks that enter into the land-based program can participate in. New growers coming in, they're in the grower training program. It's a tiered model to work on developing those basic farm skills as they move into more market development in level 2 and 3. And then growers with more experience that have a smaller established business, they can come into the program and have some of that more business planning support, land access, and resources and infrastructure that we provide to take their business to the next level. So get into markets. So in the past, Big River Farms has participated in many different types of markets and have different aggregation models for the growers they work with. So I'm just going to run through these, point out a couple of things that worked and didn't about each model. So we had a CSA for about 10 years. Everyone knows the logistical challenges with CSAs. So working to aggregate and purchase in volumes of produce from all of the different farmers required a lot of staff coordination. Some CSA numbers started dwindling a bit, and we were having to buy in a lot of produce from outside growers. Some were alumni, which was a really great way to stay connected and support other farmers. But logistically, it ended up really falling short a lot of the weeks, and they decided to fold the CSA program before I took on this position. It worked well as a great new entry point for new growers to kind of learn how to grow diversity of crops, and it was a provided market. We have grown in a communal model where growers grow on the same plot, and then they have a communal farm stand. That was just like a timing thing. It wasn't well attended, but it was a good way for growers to collaborate together. Hunger relief efforts, we have done various models of food distribution through the food group for donation of produce. Different growers are in different community groups that they bring their produce to as well, but obviously they're not getting market prices for that produce. Sometimes the management of that distribution is very challenging. Wholesale, it's, for growers growing on small scale, when they're starting, growing volume at wholesale isn't really cost effective, and it limits a lot of them to just a few crops. And also, it's not as forgiving and flexible as other markets when folks get into contract. But it's also a guaranteed sale, a good way to make relationships, and a good way to kind of accelerate the learning process, which a lot of farmers have expressed interest in. Food co-op, also somewhat tricky to some of the history of the relationships with circulating farmers coming in and out of the program. It really changes the quality, quantity, the varying produce from year to year. So when you kind of have a circulating program, it can be hard to maintain that consistent model. But with some, we're re-talking and some with more structure, if we kind of build in a consistent crop template, maybe we could fill in with that much of those changes to engage the local grocery stores in the community. Farm to school, that we have participated in different farm to school contracts in the past. It's a great engagement piece. They're eager to work with us. It requires a lot of coordination, a ton of pre-planning. The main one we participate in is a ton of paperwork, lots of regulations, kind of very fixed. So it works well in terms of like a solid contract. Farmers are excited about it. What's challenging is tying into large volumes of produce that for new growers can be really difficult to also fulfill their contracts. And some folks' fields were not diverse because they were just growing a volume just for the farm to school. And farmers market, we participated in a Minneapolis farmers market for many years. We ended up folding that program actually just this year. The logistics of pulling off the farmers market was requiring a full staff member, organizational vehicle for transportation. Farmers could not bring their crops to market. And so, and people were seeing it, the time commitment, as very difficult. No one wanted to commit to the market every week, so they changed their, so we had a lot of collective conversations about how to move forward and decided to fold our farmers market booth. So after much conversation with growers and vendors and staff meetings, these are the markets we are landing on for 2024. So we really wanted to streamline how many markets we were supporting and aggregating so we could focus on doing that really well and allow the growers to really work on building up their production and training while not being spread thin amongst many markets. So we are doing, Big River is hosting as an aggregator farm to school with Minneapolis Public Schools, and this is for growers that are second year and beyond. So we're kind of half aggregator. We help like with the organizing, the paperwork, the planning, but it is really farmer led. A lot of the details that happen amongst just like growing dates, packing, all of that coordinating is driven by them. We also help support with transportation with our delivery vehicles. This will be the second year with this cohort with Farm to School. And LFET, Local Food for Every Table, it's a food distribution program. Farmers selling at wholesale. New growers coming into the program will be able to participate in this at the kind of towards the August, September main crop season. After they get some more training, it'll be a great entry into selling. It's flexible. You can sell whatever you want every week, minus like a short list of sensitive greens they have on it. Farmers can bid every week. They get an allotted amount of a minimum of 3,300 per season, and flexible buying, and it's picked up and delivered for them. So it's a great market. But farmers have to do the steps of like putting their own invoice, bidding their own crops, and we just help facilitate some of those other pieces. And there are some affordable grocery pop-ups through the larger organization that we will host. Other farmers have their own things going on too. Some have CSAs, some do their own farmers market or their own wholesale contracts with co-ops. And as mentioned, some of that community distribution. Mentorship, trying to move faster here. And then what we provide and support still, if folks have independent markets, is still mentorship and planning for farmers that need support with other aspects of their business they're doing. And so farmers have how we engage and support and work with them. There are some farmers that have organized their own collective groups for doing wholesale purchasing and buying together. You know, they've really taken that on to like work with each other. which is really amazing. And we collaborate with whatever they need on that, like transportation support, for example. We get feedback from listening sessions, doing pre-season and end of season meetings on markets, growing season, support needs. We really want to develop programming that is responsive to what growers and farmers are looking for, what their needs are, how they want to sell, what they want to do with their business, and the markets that are available. But it's always tricky to balance that when you have like a cohort that may come in and out, to keep a consistent training program model that doesn't just shift constantly to a few people that are in the program, because the needs often change. So yeah, and a lot of the food through those channels that I mentioned that we're doing go straight to metro area communities, either in Minneapolis public schools or through agency partners that distribute culturally relevant crops. We provide those initial resources to beginning growers. So the infrastructure pieces, transportation, stipends for training and education, and we have about 5 staff, and there's a ton of hands-on TA support to work with growers in their businesses in field. And for the aggregation support, as mentioned, we do a lot of that planning with them, and we don't take a cut of those contracts either. So 100% of those sales go to farmers. Okay, next.
All right, I'll just give a really brief overview of New Roots. We're a 4-year training program for refugees and immigrants who have an agricultural background in their home country. And we provide training support. They get a 1/4-acre plot on our incubator farm for their 4 years. We do sales support. We teach education, farm education classes and English classes. And basically each year, in their first year, we provide a lot of support to farmers, and then each year we provide a little less support, and they have more responsibility, so that at the end of their 4th year, they'll have a good idea of what it'll take to run a farm independently. And many people are able to purchase like 1 or 2 acres in Kansas City, and they farm there when they graduate. And then some, this year it's about 6 farmers they still continue farming on our incubator farm and can sell into our sales programs. So we can go to the next slide. Oh. All right, so we kind of have 3 main sections of sales. We have an aggregated CSA with 150 members. We run that with 2 full-time sales staff and a part-time assistant, and we handle all of the customer recruitment, communication, ordering, and delivery. And then farmers just drop off produce. And yeah, we do the rest. We do a 20% fee for that. We take a 20% cut, and farmers keep 80%. And we've been doing that aggregated model since 2018. Formerly, we helped set farmers up individually with their own CSA members. I think it was usually about maybe 20 to 25 members. And a big barrier for that was just that many of the farmers are not proficient in English, and had some technology barriers as well. And so it was difficult for farmers to keep customers past graduation. And so that's since we've switched to that aggregated model for the past several years. And then we also do aggregated wholesale sales, mainly to restaurants. And then this past year, we started selling to food pantries through the local food purchase assistance program, which I'll talk about in a bit. And then farmers individually go to different markets in Kansas City. So there's about 30 different markets that they attend, and they go independently from us. So we help get them set up and apply, but then they go themselves, and some even go to more than one a week. They really seem to enjoy the markets. There's definitely like, they don't tend to make as much money at markets, but it's a popular way for the farmers that we work with to sell. And then those are mostly public markets, but then we've also set up some like church pop-ups where farmers will go every Sunday and sell to the parishioners at churches. Yeah, and just touching quickly on grower engagement, we get a lot of feedback from farmers on an ongoing and yearly basis. Farmers find their own sales channels through lots of times like their own communities. And then, yeah, we're trying to scale up our wholesale buyers for like restaurants and increase engagement with chefs and help farmers build relationships sort of independently from us. And that's something I think we're wanting to focus more on, is helping farmers kind of form their own relationships with buyers. So that's something we need to definitely increase. And then farmers just kind of talk amongst themselves about which markets are good and bad to sell your produce at. And then lastly, the question of like supporting farmer livelihoods while also making, food accessible. We do an option where customers can purchase a CSA share to be donated to the food pantry weekly. So I think last year, maybe 6 or 7 shares were donation shares each week. The local food purchase assistance program, I think it has different names in different states, but basically there's federal money for food banks to purchase food from local farms for their pantries. And so last year that brought in about 15,000 of revenue to farmers. We have a private grant and we do free produce distributions in our neighborhood. Our partner organization, Cultivate, has a mobile grocer that just started. So that drives around to different housing facilities in different neighborhoods to sell produce. And then, as I said, lots of farmers go to farmers markets, and most of those markets have double up SNAP. And so that's another, avenue for food access. That's it.
I'm gonna.
Great. All right. Well, do you guys want to do the Jamboard, or would you prefer we go into breakout groups now? Or do folks have any questions for the presenters? I guess we could also start there.
I am still kind of new to farming terms. What is the aggregate model for CSAs and markets? When you mean, what does that mean?
For us, what I mean is that like we purchase, so there's about 16 farmers on our site, and then a network of like 40 graduates, and Catholic Charities purchases produce from all those farmers, and then we distribute it to customers. So that's what it is for a CSA. We don't do aggregate markets, which Summer could speak to.
Yeah, and that's the model that we use here too.
Great. I see one other question in the chat. Julia is curious about staff time and FTE spent on market coordinations between your programs.
We used to have a market coordinator in the role to help facilitate some of these like contracts and coordination. That position has since left, and we work with other staff members to kind of help delegate some of these market and TA aspects. We are figuring out what that requires from staffing before reposting or rehiring a position like that, and really what makes the most sense. So I'm curious also what other folks do.
Great. And Aida had a question about does LFPA or local food purchasing assistance funding give farmers market rate, or is it wholesale pricing? Or how do you set your prices for that relationship?
We do wholesale pricing. We just set our own prices, and it's like a bid, and they accept us, and we get like we're a higher priority working with like socially, if like farmers are socially disadvantaged, they're higher on the bidding list, at least in our state.
Cool.
Yeah,
And then,
same.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we set the wholesale pricing for our local food purchasing program too.
And then Joe, you have your hand raised. Did you ask your question in the chat about Summer's website or other information?
Yes, I did.
Great.
Okay, I'll add it.
Awesome. And then Michael, you have your hand raised.
Hey y'all. I was wondering, what does it look like when approaching retail buyers like restaurants and things like that for doing an aggregate model of selling produce versus an individual farm going to them? And then also, are the restaurants and other retail purchases that y'all are working with, do they market the fact that they are purchasing from local and BIPOC farmers?
Yeah, I can speak to that a bit. So yeah, we like our organization generally, like we form the relationship with the chef. And then but like when they purchase, we use local food marketplace, the chef can like pick what it has farmer names next to the produce, so they can like still pick an individual farmer to purchase from. And so, you know, if they've had good produce from that farmer, they might consistently purchase from them. But yeah, as I mentioned, we like to work on helping farmers just form individual relationships with chefs. And then I can't remember the second part of the question. Sorry.
Do the people that you work with, do they advertise that this food is coming from local farmers and BIPOC farmers?
I think most of them do, yes.
And what is the local food marketplace that you mentioned? Is that a thing that's regional or is that a national platform?
It's national. It's our sales software that we use. Does anybody else use that one? I know there's like Harvey is another popular one, which I actually kind of like that one more as a customer, but local food marketplace is pretty good. And so farmers, like at the beginning of the week, will post produce on there, and then we order from them for the CSA, and then chefs and individual retail customers can order directly from farmers as well on that platform.
Thank you.
Great. And Lena, you had your hand up.
Thanks. I guess I have a question for both Kristin and Summer. I work at Transplanting Traditions Community Farm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. We work with mostly refugee farmers from Burma. And Kristin, our models definitely have a lot in common. It's an aggregate model. So for that 20% that you guys take from sales to fund staff time, I'm curious how you came up with that. Right. And then for Summer, if you guys, we also, 100% of the sales go back to the farmers and we fund staff in other ways. Summer, I'm curious how y'all fund staff.
I'll just answer it really quickly. Yeah, so in the past, I would say, just to be clear, we did, like when we did the CSA model, we did buy in and take a percentage and then redistribute to kind of cover the work of managing it when we had that market coordinator role. Just as kind of having to pay for time that it took for aggregation. It took this person multiple days during the week to coordinate 150 person CSA. So we don't have the CSA anymore, and the amount of time we split between organizing on staff time, which is kind of built into our programming, for the support level we're doing now, we did not want to take a cut from that because we don't feel like it is the same level of investment and we're able to fund it this year. I don't know what that will always look like going forward. And I need to add that actually we paid a stipend to a farmer mentor, which was one person in the farm to school group last year, and we will continue to do it this year, who helps coordinate some of the logistical stuff between the farmers. So they're paid an hourly mentorship rate to do like a few hours a week. And I believe it's even at like $30 an hour. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how originally the 20% was conceived. I believe it was based on a calculation of like if we have it was this was like 6 years ago. I think they're like if we have 300 CSA members, like 20% would fund a staff, like a full-time staff member to coordinate the CSA. And that was sort of ill-conceived because we'll never have a 300 member CSA. But so it goes to, and it's also like talking to other programs. I think people take like, we notice like 25 to 30% is like generally the range. And so we're just shooting for something in there. And it just sort of goes to, yeah, defray the costs of the CSA for us.
Thank you both.
Great. Then Julian and then Quentin.
Yeah, I just had like a question, maybe like a bit technical, but I think one of the complexity of aggregating is that, we get a lot of like small amounts from a lot of farmers and, I mean, we do operate like a food hub too, and then we need to redistribute to different wholesalers. So I was just curious if like through your experience, you have like a few things that you've done to make this process easier and more time efficient.
We disbanded the CSA because it was we couldn't work on those logistical challenges at this time as an organization, and then got into this farm to school program with the growers to kind of help substitute. So the interesting thing about the farm to school coordination is it's a large volume. So it's like a 2,000 pounds of beets in September. And that farmer mentor organizes the quantities and percentages that each farmer is going to sell, how many bed feet, what their yield is going to be. And that's the percent that they're responsible for in the aggregation. And then when it comes to selling, they all pack their percent in their own boxes, and then the delivery goes out together. So that's a very streamlined way to do aggregation because it's a fixed large volume crop. But yeah, the mixed CSA model, the tips of doing that are difficult. And also the farmers market booth, it was very complicated. Our ideas to like improve it going forward, if we continued it this year, was to like maybe have people sign up for like their main crops, so we could have like a regular consistent see at the booth, like this person, these two always had like, they were always bringing the kale or something like that to help streamline the offerings. But we did decide to discontinue it based on farmer interest. But I think setting up a structure like that could be interesting and led by the farmers planning like what crops they want to specialize in.
So Julie, you're asking about like organizing with like all of the different farmers and making sure you have like crops on time. Is that sort of what you're?
No, it was like it was actually more like just like the logistics of like once you get everything, and I guess like I mean what Summer has mentioned makes a lot of sense. Is like standardizing and pre-packing. Like for us, one of the problem that we have is like we receive in some boxes, we need to repack everything in different boxes, and it's like it is super complicated. And so I don't know if people have like similar experiences and have found good ways to improve the process of like just like the repacking and delivering. yeah, standardization definitely would help.
Yeah.
All right, I want to ask a couple more questions, and then maybe you guys can have that great conversation in smaller breakout groups. But I see, Quentin, you have your hand up, and then I just want to address a couple of the questions in the chat, and then we'll move into breakout sessions.
Mine was just a quick question about the stipend for the position that you just talked about really quickly, Summer. Was that written into a grant, or did you just pull that out of the sales from the farm, let's say?
Yeah, so we have some larger we have the ARPA grant, we have some larger federal grants that have TA and mentorship funding in them. So we pull from that, we hire some outside TAs, and that allows us to pay farmer mentors too.
Great, and then there's a good question in here from Aita about the farm to school, and do you do any produce processing to meet the needs of schools? I know they always want peeled, chopped, whatever, already to save on their labor time. So I don't know if you do any of that or if it's just raw veggies.
Yeah, no, Minneapolis Public Schools is a force, and you cannot touch, cut, prep anything. So we distribute it to the wholesaler and the school. They have a uniquely robust food program in Minneapolis Public Schools. They've been doing it for quite a while. They're really one of the more like pioneering districts in the metro. So they do all their own preparations, menu making. They have their own culinary program. And so because of that, and the wholesaler we go through, the traceability stuff, and that's why I mentioned all farmers have to pack in their own boxes, and we can't repack at all because of food traceability. So that would translate into like any preparation too.
Interesting. And then Isaac had a question about what's been the most effective tool for outreach to potential CSA and other customers.
I don't know. I guess like we have a pretty big social media following, so that helps. Another thing is that we're a partnership between two organizations. So like Catholic Charities and then our partners Cultivate. So we sort of have two different pools. And then, yeah, we have a full-time sales coordinator that just last year did a lot of cold calling and putting up posters. I think advertising at like businesses nearby has been a helpful thing. But yeah, it's always a struggle.
Great. Well, I'd love to thank you, Summer and Kristin, for all your great information and sharing. I'm going to stop the recording now because we're going to move into breakout groups, but that was really